Alright, you're looking at a 2008 Mercury Mariner, Ford Escape, Mazda Tribute, I believe is the same. I think it's a Mazda Tribute. Definitely a Mazda, I think it's Tribute. Anyway, they're all the same. Anyway, this has got a bad wheel bearings, and unfortunately it's the press-in style, so we'll have to use a press to take the bearing in and out. There's a few other options if you don't have a press that I'll go over later in the video. Well, there's only like 2 other options plus one more other option that's involves you going to a machine shop. But anyway, we'll go over that. So I'll just get you in there and show you what's going on. This wheel bearing actually was so bad that the caliper bracket, the wheel was so loose that the caliper bracket was rubbing a hole or rubbing a groove into the rotor there. It was pretty bad. Once you get to about 40 miles an hour, it was just like a real bad grinding, droning noise. So, and this axle also is pretty rusty on this. You can barely tell that that's a nut on the axle. I'll kind of get you in there and show you all that, and we'll go over it. But anyway, we'll just break it down, and I'll kind of break down your different options for everything as I go. Alright, so you can see here's the groove I was talking about. This is so loose. See all that play? That's all the wheel bearing play. So it's so loose that it was just rubbing against this bracket here and caused a groove. And then this is so rusty you can barely tell it's a nut still. But we're going to go ahead and put a new axle in this, new rotors, pads, and a new wheel bearing, of course. So the first thing I always do when doing this, after you get the wheel off, is we'll pull these brake calipers off and hang them off to the side. And then we'll pull this brake caliper off, get this rotor out of the way, and then we'll get down to the knuckle. So I'm going to get the tools to pull this off, and then we'll hang it off this. Alright, so Ford uses kind of an odd size on these brake calipers. It's a 9mm hex, so we're going to go ahead and get those off. Seems like a lot of the kits for the hex don't have the 9mm, so it's kind of odd size in that regards, in my opinion. And they do have, a lot of them times, if no one's lost them, they do have these rubber plugs over the caliper bolts. Just pull those right off. You have your slides here. Caliper bolts, pins, whatever they want to call them. Alright, and then we have this little caliper spring here. And that normally just pops off. Just take a screwdriver or something, kind of get behind it. Usually they pop off easier than that. Once you get that popped off, go ahead and remove your caliper, and we're just going to use a hook and hook it off to the spring on your strut so it's out of the way. Take your pads off. Now these pads are about 50%, but we're going to go ahead and change it because of this groove in the rotor. And we want it to be right. So the next thing will be to get the caliper bracket off. Let me get my tools out for that, and then we'll get this rotor off. And alright, so your caliper bracket bolts, which are behind here. If you look behind your rotor, you'll see 2 bolts, 18mm. I try to always mention the size of the bolts and stuff on the video, but evidently I didn't mention the size on one of my past videos, and someone got really upset with me and said I sucked and kind of went off on me. You know, I do these videos trying to help people that may not work on their cars normally, or even someone that's a do-it-yourselfer and wants to learn real quick how to do a certain job. And I make mistakes, and I try to do the sizes when I can. But if I can't, you know, just figure it out. It's not that hard. There's no reason to say someone sucks or goes off on them. Not that I really care. I know you have to have thick skin to have a YouTube channel anyway. I just think it's funny that you know, the one time I don't mention it, they freak out. But so these are 18 back here. Top one was pretty tight. Tight. Once you get those two out, then this should slide off, and you can kind of see here on the bottom of the bracket that metal. That's where it was rubbing. That's how much play it had. So then this should just slide off. And it's got a lot of corrosion on it right here, so I'm going to hit it. Now, if you were going to reuse this rotor, you wouldn't hit it with a hammer, but since we got new rotors coming, we're just going to go ahead and smack it. And that's what I was afraid of. It's corroded all the way around this real bad. So I'm going to go turn the wheels and really start hitting on this thing. Hopefully yours isn't like that, especially if you're reusing your rotor. Like I said, we're not reusing it, but there's quite a bit of rust back here, and this is real rusty. So I'm gonna have to clean all this up once we will reuse this hub. You know, the bearing's no good, but it doesn't come with a new hub. You can buy them, but there's no reason to. We'll just clean this all up, and should be fine. So I'll straighten the wheel back out. We got to get this wheel sensor off. It's usually 10 mil, I think, and then we'll straighten out, take the axle nut off, and start taking the. All right, so I lied about the wheel speed sensor size, 8 millimeter. That's right by your tie rod here, in between your shield. Of course, you just kind of follow the line down and pull out this 8 millimeter bolt. Hopefully the speed sensor's not rusted in there. It looks pretty rusty. Oh man. So I'm gonna have to work on this a little bit. Well, what is about these these escapes and rust, but man, their undercarriages rust so bad, it seems like. I've done quite a few of those transmission band replacements, and the oil pump on the transmission rusts out really bad on these things. So I'm just kind of working this back and forth, getting my screwdriver under there a little bit at a time and popping up on it. Almost got it out. It is really rusted. Alright, let me get a bigger screwdriver and then. Alright, so I ended up spraying it down a little bit with some oil and just working it back and forth as gently as I could. I don't believe it got damaged, but we'll hope. It looks like it's been replaced too. It's so rusty down there, it's just hard to get anything to come loose. So we'll take the axle nut off next. And that's 32 mil. Hopefully it comes off. It looks pretty rusty. Alright, next thing we're going to go for is this tie rod. Should be 18 mil, I believe. And we'll zip this off. Try to zip it off. Alright, let me get deep well. deep well 18. Everything is rusty. I'm gonna spray this down real quick. I don't know what it is about these escapes. Of course, in Missouri, they throw all that road salt and stuff down, and get pretty bad rust up here. So if you take the nut off and just kind of beat it a couple times, it should pop right out. And next thing we'll do is take these off. Those are 18 mil also. So we'll zip those off real quick. Good thing about these escapes, they use a lot of the same size. A lot of the bolts under the motor mounts and all that are all 15 millimeter. They use a lot of the same size bolts and nuts on different things. One thing I do like about these, like Chrysler, sometimes they want to use 6 different sizes for one thing. It's kind of nice to not have that. So all you got left now is your motor mount, or not your motor mount, your ball joint. Gotta be talking about motor mounts for some reason. So once you get these 2 bolts out up here, both 18 mil on both sides, your strut should be loose from your knuckle, and should be able to just kind of push on the strut, and that'll release the knuckle. And then this, you should be able to take your axle out at this point. Easily slide right out, but everything's rusty on this, so alright, let me look at something real quick here. Alright, so after I got the axle out, I went ahead and slid the bolts back up on the top of the knuckle there, and I attached a slide hammer to the hub here using one of these. I use these to push axles out that are seized, and you can also hook them to a slide hammer and pull these hubs out. There's another way to pull these hubs out. You can use a bearing race pusher and strike them real hard when they're upside down, when they're off the car. That will work. I've done that many times, but I find it's just easier and cleaner to use a slide hammer. They usually come out pretty easy with a slide hammer. Now this one's fighting me really bad coming out. I don't know if I'll have to get a new hub for this one or not, but it's really seized in there, probably from the heat and the bearings going out and all that good stuff. So I'm going to slide hammer a few more times and hopefully it pops out, and we'll see if we can save this hub. This thing, it's coming, but it's just tearing everything up. Man, oh man, this one is really seized in there. So the whole bearing fell apart. Now this is normal here to leave this part on there, so I'm going to cut that off like I normally do, and we might be able to save this hub. Otherwise, we'll just get a new hub and press it in. But anyway, now that we got that off, and you can see here, there's ball bearings all over the floor. The whole thing just fell apart when I pulled that hub out, which is not, doesn't happen too often. I mean, it can happen, but it's not a super common thing to happen on these. So I'm going to go ahead and just take these two bolts out again, which I didn't, they're just slid in there, they're not tight or anything. And then we're going to go for this lower ball joint, and then this hub will come off of here. This whole knuckle will come off, and then we can put this in the press and get the bearing out. So let me get the tools for the ball joint, and we'll get the ball joint remover. And all right, the ball joint nut and bolt. The nut is 15 mil and the bolt is 13 mil. And you're going to want to use a ball joint separator to separate it after you get the nut and bolt off, just so you don't ruin the boot on the ball joint. If you end up ruining the boot, eventually the ball joint will fail, getting dirt and stuff in there, debris. So we're just going to take this nut off and put the separator in there, and then we'll be able to pull this whole hub off as one unit, or knuckle, steering knuckle. And the bottom bolt is rusty. Let me get something to turn that real quick, and then we'll, man, it's just horrible trying to work on this. Alright, once you got the hub assembly off, now you should have to take this snap ring off. Now mine came off when I was doing the slide hammer with the hub because it was so seized in there. So mine actually popped off. I may have to either replace this or try to get it. It's not bent too bad, just barely bent. So I might be able to resave this one, clean it up, and save it. But I don't even know if I don't know if I can even get these or what it would be to get one. But it's really not bent very much, so I should be able to straighten it out. So the other way to get that hub out is you could put it in the press. You'd have this upside down in the press like this, and rig up a way to get that out, press it out. So if you have a press, that you may do that. Normally, 99% of the time, using the slide hammers is, in my opinion, is usually the fastest way to do it instead of messing with the press. But this one's just so rusty, it's just hassling. Everything's hassling me on it, and so I'd probably been better off using the press with this particular situation. But anyway, we're gonna get this over to the press and start pressing this bearing out and cleaning this up and getting it back together. Alright, so here's the part where if you don't have a press at home and you don't have the on-the-car wheel bearing remover kit, you're going to take it to a machine shop and have them do it. Usually they charge between 40 and 60 bucks to press them in and out. So that's one option. You'll still save a lot of money over paying a shop to take it. A lot of shops, believe it or not, don't have presses, so they usually farm it out to their machine shop. I mean, some do, but I actually worked at 2 shops that didn't, and it's pretty common for shops to just farm out this type of work to the machine shop. They'll pull this steering knuckle off just like we just did and send it out to the machine shop and then get it back all pressed in. So that's an option if you don't have a press. If you have a press, then what I use, I got this big cup here. This is actually out of a front wheel drive bearing remover kit that I got from Harbor Freight a long time ago. I actually bought 2 of them, one for using on the press and then one for using on the cars. So you just put this upside down into that cup, and then you'll find something to drive that press out, and drive the bearing out. So you're just looking for something that will, that's perfect. So this goes perfectly on top of this bearing, and it should press that right out, or drive it right out. So we're just going to get this set up, get it closer down in there, and then I'm going to get it closer down in there and get my jack handle, and then we'll just press. Alright, so this is really brutal. I had to add some cups here just because my jack was maxed out. But it's just coming out really, really hard. I actually heated this up a whole lot with this MAP gas and got it to break loose. But it's just, I don't know, this may need a hub or a knuckle. When this is all over, I have to take a look at it. Now it's finally coming out. This is probably the second hardest bearing I've ever had to try to press out. I had one on a Honda one time that was just a nightmare. But, I believe now it's pressed out, but I can't touch it because I have it so hot with this MAP gas trying to get it to break loose that I won't be able to touch it for probably 10 minutes or so. So normally they don't press out that hard. Normally, you know, you'll get a little bit of resistance and then it'll just kind of pop and then go off. This one was not having any part of that, so I had to get the heat out and put way more pressure on it than I felt comfortable with to get it out. But it is out now. Hopefully the hub, this knuckle is okay. I don't know. I'm sure it is, because it's a pretty substantial piece of iron there. But yeah, I had to heat it up pretty heavily and to get to go. But it's out now, so I'm going to wait a few minutes, let this thing dry off. Or dry off. I can't speak today. Let this thing cool off, and then we'll take a look at it. And alright, so to press it back in, I got that big cup under there, and I'm just flipping it over. Now this here is bigger than the bearing, so I'll have to change that out when I get closer in. Right now I'm just trying to get the seat down in there. And this blue stuff here is just transmission assembly lube. I usually put a little bit of lube in there to let it go down easy. These are going down pretty easy. You'll get that little creaking noise almost on any bearing you put in. But so I'm going to get it all the way down. I'm going to have to change this cup out when I get level here because it has to go past that cup a little bit. And it'll bottom out on that ridge on the bottom. And when it bottoms out, you're good. There's no point in keep cranking on it because you could ruin the bearing that way. So just once it bottoms out on the bottom ridge, there's no reason to push it any farther. And like I said, once I get this metal piece down to here, I'll stop, put a smaller one in there, one that lines up with the bearing edge, and drive it in the rest of the way, and then you're almost home at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. It's kind of boring watching that, and then we'll alright, so I got a little ahead of myself. I forgot to turn the camera on. I actually got this hub, got the part of the wheel bearing off on this hub, and you know, I've made other videos on how to do that. Mainly just put it, what I normally do is just put it in the vise, and then I take a cut-off wheel and cut off at an angle and cut a relief hole in there, not all the way through. You don't have to cut it all the way through, but you know, a good portion of it, and then this will, you can start hitting it with a drift or whatever, and it'll come off. So it only takes a few minutes with a cut-off wheel to do that, and then like I said, just kind of go in at an angle like this one is, and it'll come off within a few minutes of cutting on it. You just don't want to cut into your actual hub here. Now the other option is you can buy a brand new hub. They're usually around 40 bucks or so, depending on the car, and that is another option that you can do. But normally if my hub's okay, I just go ahead and cut this off and be done with it. So yeah, so now all I do is put this upside down on the vise or the press, and then put the hub on here and start pressing it down. So I'm going to go ahead and lube this up a little bit like I always do, and then we'll set up the press. Alright, so I got this hub elevated off of the lug nuts here, or the lugs here. If you put this straight on the press without elevating it, sometimes these wheel stubs will pop out, so you don't want that. So just put something underneath there to kind of elevate it off. Got the knuckle upside down, and all we're doing is just pressing straight down on this, and it should slide right in, and then you're done with it.
Yep.
Alright, so you just slide your knuckle back into your ball joint, tighten that up 14 mil. You're going to slide your axle back in, put it back to your strut, put your tie rod back on, your brakes, you're good to go. So that's pretty much all there is to changing the hub and bearing. On Escape, again, if you don't have a press, just take this piece to machine shop, have them do the work for you. It's still cheaper than having a shop do it. And that's pretty much it. That's all. There's no sense showing you how to put it all back together. If you took it apart, you can put it back together. So thanks for watching. Have a good day. As always, God bless. Thanks.